and thank you for joining BIM360 Group. My name is Dana DeFilippi, coming to you from my home office in Virginia. For those of you who do not know me, I'm a BIM technologist and now computational leader at Smith Group, active participant in many different Dynamo and Revit related user groups, participant on the BIM Thoughts podcast, and many other things. 5 Revit user groups along the East Coast have come to you to bring you the BIM360 Group. The network is run by a board of advisors to help guide the meetings. Our hope is to provide a live forum for people to share and connect on processes and tools related to building modeling. As a side note, all of these are recorded and put up on our LinkedIn group for future review. We also post all kinds of links and articles related to the meeting as well. So definitely check that group out and join if you are not already a member. Today's topic is on clash detection. We have back from last time, Scott Buchanan from Autodesk, an MEP subject matter expert. Very excited to have him today. We also have a group presentation from Heather Worrell and Gautham Prasad, if I pronounce that correctly, as well as our very own advisor, Laura Kaiser. So very excited for their presentations today. As always, we have a randomly selected participant from our surveys. Thank you all who filled out our surveys. But today we have Michael as a participant winner. So you have won a $25 gift card. Congratulations. Dynamo shows you. As always, please make sure you are using the chat. It's what makes us awesome. We once again want this to be a live forum for you guys, all the participants and experts that are with us on the call today. So make sure that you're communicating up there with us, always monitoring that and adding anything that you have to share. So without further ado, we will ask you guys our typical poll questions here. I'll jump out of my presentation, open up my polls. So typical first poll question, where are you calling from? Launch that in there. If you do not see the representation of where you're calling from, please throw it in the chat. Or if you want to be more specific, throw it in the chat. Love to see where you're calling from specifically. Looks like most of us are calling in from the southeast or northeast as we're running this poll here. I want to get most of you guys in this poll, which you should see in front of you now. Share these results. So a lot from the southeast, 50% of you, 29 from the northeast, got some from Canada, and a few from Europe, one from Europe, one from Canada. So love to hear specifically where you guys are calling from outside of the US in particular. Another question that we want to ask you guys is what industry you are with. So if you could, of course, if you are what discipline, if you do not see your discipline represented here, of course, check other and let us know in the chat what the other represents for you. Once again, give you guys a little bit of time. Looks like you guys are a little faster on this response. That's good. And pulling here and share those results. So as expected, architecture, interior design, but today we have a lot of construction. That's really exciting. 7 of you through the construction discipline or industry. So I will stop sharing those. And the last poll we have today is, do you use, excuse me, BIM360 for clash detection specifically? Yes. No, we use Navisworks only. No, we use another program that is not BIM360 or the Autodesk Construction Cloud or Navisworks, something completely different. We don't do clash detection, or I don't know. You guys are pretty quick to respond on this one too. All right. And polling on this and share the results. So lots of Navisworks in there. That was a good add to our poll there. Yes, a lot of you do use BIM360 there. So thank you so much, as always, for your responses. And I'll move it over to Scott. Hey, Scott, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Very happy to have you back.
Yeah, I won't. I promise I'll stay on topic this time. I remember the previous two presentations sparked me to talk about some other stuff before I got going, so I'm not going to do
Well, and
that
I think
today.
that's actually part of what makes our group so awesome, right? That chat sometimes just gets off on a tangent, but that's cool. As long as
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
coming away taking something that they're interested in, that's our whole goal, right? Make it totally geared to you guys, what you guys want to talk about. So once
right.
again, make sure you're using that chat. So if ever you want to get your presentation up, we are ready for it. Looks like you got it up.
There
I
we
can see
go.
it.
Okay, so again, if I get off script,
I'll get you back in. I will bring you right back on topic. Looks like we got a blink on him. Looks like we are having a few landscape architecture. Doesn't look like it's represented there. So we need to, I guess, add landscape in somewhere.
there we go. Zoom died. Sorry.
No worries. No
I'm
worries.
back.
Just looking at, oh, Belgium. Got somebody calling in from
I did see
Belgium
that when I
today.
was watching. There we go.
That is
Okay.
super interesting.
See my screen?
I
Reset
sure can.
there. All right. So again, as I was saying, if I get off script, it's just self-inflicted since nobody's going in front of me. So what I plan to talk about today is extending clash and coordination workflows, basically from the cloud standpoint and how we can integrate at the desktop side of things, and then potentially push that back up as well. And of course, looking at our portfolio of tools to do so. So here's what I want to hit. BIM Collaborate in general. So Autodesk BIM Collaborate or Pro if we were going that direction, but just kind of lightly show that because I really don't want to focus so much on the cloud. I want to focus more on how we can push that downstream into the desktop. So we've got some add-ins that you may or may not be aware of. So being able to leverage, for example, issues that are created in BIM Collaborate and push those down into Navisworks and actually work with those issues, and then also, communicate those back if we need to. And same thing on the Revit side. So having a plugin available there where we can leverage those same issues and get those pushed into a Revit model, do that same level of interaction. And again, time permitting, I might show some reports from the clashing side of things, or the coordination reports that I could do back inside of either BIM 360 or our Construction Cloud. All right, so we'll jump right into it because I do have a tendency to talk way too much, and I'm on a limited time frame here. Okay, so right now I am in a BIM 360 based project on our Autodesk Construction Cloud. So what I'm going to show is relevant whether you have a BIM 360 project and you're using BIM 360 Docs, or an Autodesk Construction Cloud project and you're using Autodesk Docs, because ultimately, once we start to push those docs into BIM Collaborate or BIM Collaborate Pro, we will have the exact same functionality that I'm going to show here. So when I say cloud for the rest of my 11-ish, 15-ish, 18-ish minutes, when I say cloud, I'm talking about both BIM 360 and our Autodesk Construction Cloud. It's just a whole lot less to say. Okay, so what I've got to find out here, just to kind of show some intent, I have a fabrication folder that's been built out. There's an electrical folder in there. There's a mechanical folder that's in there. That's great. This is housing my Revit models. So as I'm publishing and pushing those up and creating packages, if you're using the consumed workflow, those Revit models are going to live inside of there. Now, I also have a folder called coordination. So inside of this coordination folder, if I put on my VDC hat, right, and these can be built out however you want, right? This is just naming conventions that you get to determine. So a little bit different here. I've got a folder called mechanical 90%. Okay, well, what does that mean? So if I go into this, I have copies of these three models basically dumped into that 90% folder. Okay, and I promise that'll make sense here in just a moment. And I've also created a Navisworks folder, which I've put nothing inside of just yet. And then I have, again, time permitting, I'll pop open one of these clash reports that I created inside of our cloud and have stored inside of here as well. So what I want to talk about is this mechanical 90%, and then also just this fabrication mechanical folder as well. All right. So what I have actually done is created coordination spaces. Okay. And those coordination spaces look at either one of those folders, a collection of those folders, or I've got multiple spaces that really have different paths going on. So if I look right here, there's one called VDC Mechanical 90%. So because those are copies, that means I'm taking whatever version of those models and I'm copying them into that folder. Okay, that's a snapshot in time. It's static. If someone syncs their Revit model, and then we create a package, we consume it and do all that, it would have no bearing on this mechanical 90% because that wouldn't be 90%, right? That would be 94% or 96% or whatever the timeline is. So we support having the ability to think of like this archived off, snapshot in time. That way we can go back to it. So obviously there'd be a lot more of those, but at the same time, as opposed to looking at that copied version, at that June, whatever date, you could have a live version of it. And I do live literally and figuratively with my naming there, just because none of this is 100% live, because once you sync, it's not like it automatically gets recognized inside of BIM360 or Construction Cloud, right? So you have to publish it. Once it's published, you get your packages, then it becomes, again, live. So to see how this extends downstream, because we could talk about this for quite a bit of time, but if I'm looking at this mechanical 90%, what I'm doing inside of here to run the clashes within our model coordination module here is I'm saying I want to look at, let's go electrical and sheet metal. So these are the 3D views that are in my Revit models that I've included those with my publish. Okay, so for my Navisworks users, think about, if you were in your Revit project and you had 3D views predefined in there in your template, and you call them Navisworks exports, and you would export out an NWC for each of these different kind of areas, right? Whether it's discipline only, level only. Like I don't have these broken out by level. I should. I do in the live one, but just not this one. So you'd be exporting out those individual NWCs and then, aggregating those inside of Navisworks. Whereas inside of model coordination, it's taking those 3D views from your publish and it's automatically extracting them out, right? So I get to choose what views essentially that I want to pull, or again, have that aggregate, behavior to it. We can also, beyond just RVT models, if we have 3D DWGs. So if someone was using AutoCAD Plant 3D, for example, to do piping, that can be brought into this space as well. Or IFC files. IFC files are only supported by like a handful of products right now. And it's like Tekla, we can grab those, Tekla, ArchiCAD, and I forget the others, okay? And the reason for that is it's not on our side, it's just how those products write to an IFC file. They don't use the same element ID every single time it creates an IFC. So for example, if I was using a non-supported product that writes to an IFC, when they spit out this cooling tower, it may be element ID 12345A. Well, the next time they export an IFC file, that would rewrite to a completely different number. So that causes problems inside of here because we're attaching issues and behavior to a unique identifier here. So that's one of them to just kind of keep in mind. So now as I pull those together, what that's going to do, yes, it's going to auto clash for me. And it's saying, hey, there's my electrical model, there's my sheet metal model, and it's grouping those clashes down inside of here. So if I want to see what those clashes are, right there, right? Never happens. Cable tray hitting sheet metal, we just won't talk about whose fault it is. So it pulled those together. But one thing you'll notice inside of here is when I'm looking at this, it's controlling what I'm able to group things by, right? So it's saying, hey, it's grouping it by the object type. So think family, the family name that's in there essentially. Or if I look at system name, which unfortunately inside of electrical based content, there are no systems. But if that was a, a piping model, for example, that may say chilled water supply or CHS1, depending upon what your naming convention is. And then type name just starts to break it down by the individual family type name, not the actual family name itself. So those are our grouping mechanisms. That's only a fraction of what Navisworks does, right? So I didn't show the slide about saying this doesn't replace Navis, but I'm telling you now, this doesn't replace Navis. It just kind of extends functionality. So I can't come in here and say, hey, I want to find all conduit 4 inches above and clash that with these girders or whatever, right? So you don't have that granular ability, but this is enabling me to come in here kind of at a high level and run some clashes if I wanted to. If I see stuff, hey, that's a big deal. We've got 141 clashes going on. Literally, did you not hit anything, right? Is when you start to look at that. So if that's a really big deal, then we start to draw attention to it and we create an issue for it, right? So it's a clash, but no one's going to know about this until you come in and generate this issue and really start to associate accountability to it, right? So if I put it on one of those trays, I get to fill out information. It does some auto populating. For time purposes, I'm not going to dwell on that. I'll just leave it generic. I'm going to assign it to myself. Well, no, let's pick on Stephen Bissett. Anybody knows him, they'll laugh at that. So we'll get that in due date. We're going to make him work on 4th of July because it's Stephen Bissett. So it gets assigned to him, owner. Again, I get to fill out more information. Now, I create custom attributes inside of my issues. So if you didn't know that, you have the ability to. So I do this just from a grouping standpoint, and you can pre-build this list, right? It's just another little filter that you can do kind of downstream. So that gets created. And at that point in time, hey, those have been assigned to him. He's getting a notification about it. That's wonderful. Now, every time I come into here, I don't want to have to choose that electrical model, choose that mechanical model, or all these other different kind of views to pull together. So if you look, I don't have any things saved just yet, but if I go back, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Remember my choice here of this being the electrical versus sheet metal. Almost like search sets, if you built those out and had them inside of there. And if you want other people to be able to use this, you can publish it, and others that have access to the model coordination in that folder of files, then they would be able to see it. So that's great for speed purposes if you're out here, because like I said, traditionally you're going to build this out by floor, maybe by area, and kind of go that direction with it. So that way, as opposed to having to scroll through here, check, you could go down to views, and right there it is. You could just shortcut to it really quick. So that's some admin type stuff you could set up on the front end to kind of build those out. And what that allows me to do downstream, let's go into Navisworks on the desktop side. So Navis Managed 2022, this works in 21 as well. You will have an add-in that you will need to install from the add-in store. It's called Coordination Issues for Navisworks. They changed the name just a little while back, but it is a free download. And it's going to ask you to open up one of your cloud-hosted models, that we've got stored up there. So again, doesn't matter whether it's BIM360 or Construction Cloud. So it remembers there's my Fab Friday playground. There's all those same views that were pushed up there. I'm on the same coordination space, or if I wanted to use a different one. And then that view I just created, to have it pull those together for me, speeds up my life. I'm going to open it up. And here's where, think about if you just opened RVT files inside of Navisworks and it would sit there and go, that's what's happening here essentially. Except for we're not creating NWCs. Now, I'm not a programmer by any means. Maybe somewhere in cloud land that there is an NWC, but you just can't see it anywhere. It's just not there. So that comes in. What can I do with it? I can say, all right, well, let's look at the issues, that are inside of here. And whatever issues that have gotten built out, right there, we can see it. There's those 141. There it is, Stephen Bissett. He's got to the 4th of July, gets to see the issue, and then he can start to communicate, back and forth. So, if something took place, maybe made a change to it, he could come back and say, hey, I've fixed all those changes. I've moved all the cable tray X amount of distance, and then he could flag that as being, answered. Right. So once that starts to happen, move tray to clear. here's that round tripping. So that's going to start, pushing that thing back up there, and kind of keeping that status going for me. So I'm able to interact with it. But at the same time, once you get here, this is Navisworks, right? This is your normal stuff that you do. So if you have your own clash rules and all that stuff that you want to load in, great. If you've got, search sets that you want to deal with, so, if you've got XMLs built out and all that kind of fun stuff, then there you go. So here's my VDC electrical search sets. I have no conduit in this model, but if I want to grab the cable tray, look, there it is, right? So at this point in time, it's just, you just do Navis stuff. Now, if you run clashes here, there's nothing that pushes those clashes back to our cloud, BIM360, Navisworks. It's just that communication of issues back and forth. But if we save this as, an NWF file, which is, your normal type of practice, save it inside of BIM360, it remembers that coordination space behavior, right? So if the Revit model were to get uploaded and have those changes fixed, I'm in a completely different project, but I'd go save that NWF file. If they fix the cable tray for real, and not just say it, move it up, make that change. If you have active clashes inside of Navisworks, when you rerun that test, it will change all those clashes to resolved for you. Okay, so they're going to be sitting as active or assigned or whatever, you put in your normal Navisworks clashing, but that will actually work, which is what like Glue would do that as well. And model coordination wouldn't do that until I think like the beginning of the year or maybe late last year, we added that functionality. So this is your Navis workflow. Keep it. All the amazing things inside of Navisworks, do them here. If you need to append other models that are not sitting inside of BIM360, let's say they're using AutoSprink or something like that and sending you CAD files or just NWC files from that, then you can just do your normal append and get those incorporated to it. And then on the Revit side of things, this actually gets installed from your desktop app. So yeah, that one there. So if you go into your Autodesk desktop app, this will list there. Why the Navisworks one's not there, no idea, even though it's older. But install that. It's going to work on Revit 20, 21, and 22 for us. But you go to the issues, we manage the issues, and then we start to see a very similar type of look to what I had just a moment ago, right? So if I want to filter down and only see certain types of clashes, right? I've got coordination and design ones. So I incorporate the clash ones. Again, it's what are you working on, right? Or, hey, I want to see only the open ones, right? So you could flag those, however you want to build those out. So that way, once you apply it, then it's going to update to just show those. So if I want to check something different than just the electrical, like here's one, chiller clearance requirement. So if I were to look at it, it's going to take me to that view, shows me that issue bubble, and then I could start to see what's the problem with this? Okay, no tube access if they need to go in there and swap that thing out. So again, that same level of interaction that, if I wanted to communicate back, I could. If they said that it was moved or, some other information associated to it, we could do that there as well.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we only have one question by Dan. Is there a way to preserve the highlighting?
Preserve which highlighting?
I'm guessing he's talking about in the coordination tab of Navisworks.
In the coordination tab.
When it was blue because it was resolved, this kind of highlighting, I'm guessing, is what he's referring to. Dan, let us know if that's not what you're referring to.
Yeah, because I still don't get it. Sorry.
Well, as Dan gets more specific on this question, we will move over to Heather and Gautham, who are going to talk to us about how utilizing BIM360 and clash detection can be more vital across the team. So, hey, Heather. Hey, Gautham. How's it going?
Hey, hello. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Good. All right, I'm going to share my screen. My computer is getting ready to take off, so you might hear that running in the background. I will say that the model coordination does take up some processing speed of your computer, so things might slow down or your graphics card might get a little heated. I was hoping to get some of the list making from Scott that published, but maybe we'll get to that at the end because I have a great interest in that. So Gautham and I are going to be talking about a school in Charlotte. The Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools is fairly advanced in what they require for their BIM workflows, and one of those things is having clashes. You know, they do require clash reports to happen. I think we got them out of like an actual report, and Gautham maybe can go into a little bit about that. I'm going to go back a little bit before. As most of you know, Autodesk has given us access now. As long as you have a design license, you also have BIM360 model coordination available. And so we are just getting into it on our side. And so I was happy that Gautham wanted to take it a little bit further after I was talking about the model coordination piece. And our MEP engineer actually does a lot of this as well. And so they kind of pushed us into a direction of needing to figure a few things out. So going back to the very beginning, how to get the views that Scott was showing is through this publish settings on your, sorry, I want that to go away. So under, publish settings here, you just want to, for us, our engineer had already created all of the MEP views that I'll show you in a moment in his file. And then we already had a Navisworks coordination view that we typically set up for our projects because on the design side, we are in design right now. On the design side, we do Navisworks coordination typically. Now that we've seen the model coordination, it's probably going to be enough for us on the design side to get us by. We know that Navisworks does many more things, but it's also, for me, harder. And I don't like the look of it necessarily. So just the beauty of the views within model coordination space on BIM360, the BIM360 Cloud is much better. So you just select the view that you want to have. I highly recommend, this one is just named export. I highly recommend that you do some nice naming conventions for these views. If you have multiple ones, like level naming, get everybody on the same page. It just helps out when you're getting into the model space. So then once that's selected, you do have to go ahead and publish that model in order for it to come up on BIM360. So here I am in our model coordination space. I don't know why this, make it go away. The little, the navigation thing is like overrunning, and I don't know how to make it go away right now. So this is what we're gonna do. So this is where the model coordination, hopefully people realize that. I do Autodesk, I think these should be reversed. Just, putting that out there. So the model coordination tab, I'm gonna click over here. This is that same portion that Scott was talking about. So you can see here, just as Scott said, our engineer did divide everything up by level. I've gone ahead and selected some of these, and I have those open over here. So just certain models we can start to look at. You can see we have our a different model not in the right place, so that's cool. I have to go in and check what's happening with my view on that one. I think it's the structural one, actually. I selected the wrong file, so we won't get any structural coordination on that. So here's the model as it's seeing things. So I just did that first level, and I like the navigation part within here. I will say, I think I like the group by type name a little bit better, but you have to make sure that your type names are something that are understandable. So if I move this one to architecture And then I have all of the other models. You're going to start to see, like, we're pretty good with our type names on the architecture side, but then we get into 12 feet. That's a cool type name. Don't know what that is. Of course, I know what all these are, so I can easily try and clash. Again, there's our, these are like our athletic field models in the wrong place. But you can come in here and start to see, you know, all the walls that are, you know, causing issues with some of the ductwork. We don't necessarily care, but it's a pretty quick way to get to where we need to be. So that's, we haven't started to get too much into this portion. Our MEP engineer is doing all that, but we will be shortly on ratio side. But I really wanted to, I want to get Gautham on the line so he can talk about what he's doing on the Navisworks side within BIM360 to help run meetings and create issues. So I'm going to stop share and hand it over to him.
All right, I'm going to push my screen here. Okay, so as Heather mentioned, CMS, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, has a pretty robust BIM standard. Some of it doesn't make a ton of sense. They ask for a clash detection log, which has fields for at a minimum clash number, clash location, column line intersection, trades involved, recommended solution, and they want you to do that for every clash, which could be thousands. So I said, gosh, guys, can we do this another way? And eventually we got them to what we're doing now. And first of all, I do want to tip my hat to Scott for acknowledging that Navisworks is great and the cloud doesn't replace it. We love Navisworks. Again, I'm a general contractor. I'm a VDC manager, and we use Navisworks primarily for coordination with subcontractors. And we get down to 3/4 of an inch or less where we get really tight. And we need the flexibility and the navigability of Navisworks, being able to section all day long and move stuff around, measure between things. It's just great. We love it. So normally what we're doing now is not coordination, it's design review. So this is where I work with designers and we look at bigger stuff, right? Here's some big things we think are going to cause problems down the road. So how can we get the design to help feed into our coordination and construction process? And we started around 50% DD usually. And what I've done in the past is I go into Navisworks, I look through the models, I say, gosh, I don't like this. I'll create a viewpoint for it, as you can see over here. I number those viewpoints. I create meeting minutes. We discuss the viewpoints. I take notes on each one. After the meeting, I send them the NWD and the meeting minutes, and then they go work on it. So that's what I've done in the past. It works fairly well. Now, what we were doing with ratio is we said, well, let's put that NWD somewhere easier to find. You know, we're already on the cloud, so why don't we just put it on the cloud? And all credit to Autodesk on this, because we very quickly hit upon a way to take how I usually do things with my team and how the designers work, and we were able to kind of click it all together, and it works really well. Yeah. So what we did is we have a folder here for Navisworks, and I go up there and I post an NWD. I put the date on it. They can go and look at old NWDs. We have a chronicle of our design review process right here. Then in a meeting, I'll open up the NWD that we're talking about. This is a meeting from 2 days ago. I'll open up the Navisworks model in the background because that's how I like to actually discuss things. And I'll say, all right, guys, this is our model. These are our views. All the viewpoints come right over, which is great. So I'm going to go to this folder, which was dated 2 days ago, and let's talk about issue number 11. So I go to this spot in the model on the cloud. We might talk about it a little bit. If I don't like how, and I mean, you can move stuff in here. It's great. But for me, Navisworks is just how I'm used to looking at things. So here I could section, I can walk down hallways. It's just faster for me. I'm used to it. So I can say, I may go back to Navisworks for the discussion purposes. Then I'll say, all right, guys, how do we want to handle this? And they'll say, you know what, let's create an issue. And let's assign that issue to person number X. I'll say awesome. I'll click on the issues tab, create issue. It asks you to click a location. That's easy. It's easy to miss this right here. You got to remember to click a location to give it an actual place to go. And now I've got an issue created here. I put a title on it, assign it to somebody. You know, I can assign it to Heather. Add any other details I want here and hit create. And so now they have this list here, right? And you'll see we've already started working through some stuff. But it's been great because I've been able to take what, again, I take what I do and how I like to do things with my team, our internal process, and I can put it up on the cloud. And now all their issues, whether it's something we created in a design review meeting or an issue they've created on their own or issues that Heather's come up with, they're all in the same place for them to look at. So, and again, we hit on this. It took us less than an hour, right, Heather?
Yeah.
To figure this out and start implementing this.
Yeah.
And so now this is just the way we do it. I don't have meeting minutes that I have to send them because all they have to do is look at their list of issues, right? They can go to an issue, they can go to the activity, they can add comments, whatever it is, they can close out issues. And suddenly there's less documentation, fewer places for them to go for the information. And it's worked great.
Yeah. And I think that, like, at least on our side, for our users that have to come in to this, like, for me, like, I've been using Navisworks, but I still, like, I'm not using it every day. So for me, it's still hard to navigate and to expect that your team, you know, that an interior designer, you know, a second year architect is going to be able to get into Navisworks and go in and, like, see things. That's a little bit much. But when we send them into to this file, it's really easy to locate things. It's easy to spin the model around and, you know, move things up and down so that you can see, like, all the implications within a ceiling plenum. So for me, that part's been fantastic. Just being able to show more people what they were, you know, what they're capable of.
No one wants to learn another ribbon, you know, like if they have to, if they don't have to deal with another ribbon interface in their life, they're going to be happy, is the way I look at it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, this is all their issues, not just the ones we've created, but everything that's come up that we've created around. And so they can click on it here and get to it. And I guess the one thing I'll tag onto what Scott was saying is how in Navisworks, there's no way to push those issues from Navis back into the cloud. Well, this is how we're doing it with the viewpoints. So it's, and again, because it's a design review, we're not going through every single fine tooth comb issue. We're hitting 15 or 20 in a meeting. And now we're going from Navisworks up to the cloud. And
or I should clarify, we can create issues in Navisworks that push up, but if you run your clashes in Navis, you can't push your clashes up.
That makes sense.
I may have said that too quick earlier.
Yeah. And there is a lot of, if you're just getting into this, there is a lot of, like, permissions and different things on the back end that you have to set up correctly. When we were first running through this, like, the MEP engineers, they couldn't see any of the issues that we were making because we hadn't opened, you know, we didn't have it set correctly for them to be able to see things. And if you are on the design side, consider with, like, organizing your issues. When we were talking to Autodesk about some of this stuff, you know, there are metrics that you can start to put in place. Some of those metrics I don't feel like make sense during schematic design and design development. Maybe into CDs, you know, that you can start to see that your project teams are always having a problem with the cable trays running into duct, you know, running into duct work. So you can start to see some of those things happen, and that's in the insight part. Maybe we'll get into that in a future session. But again, if you're just getting started on this, all those permissions on the back end, there's just a lot to go through to make sure that people see the right thing. I just ended up opening all the issues up to everybody. You can filter them pretty easy, go from there.
Like we do have one question in terms of how you're bringing in the specialties and aggregating the fabrication models with the design models. Are you keeping the design and build coordination processes separate? Thank you, Dan. wonderful questions.
So that's something we've talked about internally in my team, is whether we want to put the designers on the cloud. Now I have coordinated with the designers in Glue, and they love it. It works great. Not all of we're actually just starting up a project now in a different region, and not all of our subcontractor modelers have Collaborate Pro, which, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but if they're going to model and push out on the cloud, they would need that Collaborate Pro license, right?
That's correct. So
Yeah.
what Pro essentially does is it enables cloud work sharing.
Yeah, so right now we're still with subcontractors using primarily Navisworks out of the cloud, Glue being the exception.
They could save the models there. They just couldn't do work sharing through there.
Yeah.
But there are multiple people on a job.
Yeah, so for those of you that aren't doing model coordination at all, like just starting off or clash detection at all, just starting off in the model coordination space on BIM360, I think is a great start if you're a design team, because it does give you that high level, oh, look at all these ducts that are under, under my ceiling. Like it's a high level, nice, pretty pictures, which we all like. Do all the work. Also work with cloud models. I don't know if I understand Dan's question. Dan's asking, do all workflows discussed also work with cloud models?
So when I have models on the cloud, if I'm running it through Navisworks, I just pull them down from the cloud and export my NWCs. So that's what So yeah, it does. And there are actually ways to auto-generate NWCs and push them out to like a shared Autodesk desktop.
I have seen some issues with non-work shared enabled models. Not like we can't link them into our models. So, but I haven't tested if you'd be able to do any kind of coordination with them. So it's a good question.
Alrighty, for our last presenter, we have Laura Kaiser. Always happy to have an advisor present with us today. She's going to be talking about how she uses the Construction Cloud and some lessons learned.
Thanks, Dana.
How are you doing today, Laura?
I am doing pretty good. I think this is a nice kind of wrap up that I'm going to do here that touches on a lot of things that everyone else has already talked about, and really kind of a more simple example for those of you that might be a little bit newer to this. So ironically enough, this is another ratio project that we are working on here with Wake County Public Schools. So the process I'm going to show you is we were doing a 60% CD constructability review. Most of it was handled by our pre-construction department, but our VDC team always kind of chips in and does a really kind of basic overall clash detection and issue reporting to assist in the process. So the steps I'm going to talk about today are we're acquiring models, running Clash in Navis. We are creating issues with that really long-winded title of an add-in within Navisworks. And then we're exporting a report at the end to give a deliverable to the design team and the owner. Okay, so step one, I think we're all pretty familiar with this. So Ratio gave us access to their, and I'm using BIM360 Docs, so same as kind of like what Scott said, just put cloud over top of any of this stuff to ease any confusion between what's going on now. So I was able to get their designer models. I just exported out NWCs. I did make an NWD file in Navisworks so that I could use this issue tracking. Had all my models together, and then clash detection. I mean, Gautham kind of touched on this. I'm creating sets for major system comparisons. I think this is also, and any time like Heather and Gautham were talking about, doing this kind of review at design, you really have to keep in mind at what you're looking at and what stage the design team is to really eliminate a lot of false positives. I also like to use it really as a heat map for kind of a broader review of what's going on. So I ran my Clash in Navis just to get an idea of what was going on within this project. Okay, so the next step, here's where I'm actually using that coordination issues add-in with Navis. So in Navis, I can create an issue really easily. I'm going to show some screenshots of that. But some other keys I did was I did save viewpoints, and I also took screenshots so we had an image to put in that report. So just some additional steps I was doing along the way to get the desired end result. Typically, we would do this just in Navis, make viewpoints, and then use something like Word to create the report. We wanted to try issues in this project, which we are doing a lot more just within the company in general, really moving to the Autodesk Construction Cloud. So this was a way to get our operations and pre-construction teams into the model, and it's a way to see the issues that we're creating. So when I was actually putting together this presentation, I was trying to do another test, and I was like, why can't I create an issue in this other file I created? So a few things, like what you see here on the right, you can only use it for an NWD file you're opening through the desktop connector, or what Scott showed with the model coordination. So keep that in mind. And like Heather mentioned, you also have to have the right permissioning. So same thing, I was like, why can't I create an issue? I didn't have permissions on that test project I was looking at. So very similar to what Scott was showing, in this process that we're doing, we are just dividing clashes in here. We're not really using that. We really divide between constructability and coordination. And that way, as we're working with the design team and the owner, we can say, okay, these are coordination issues that we'll figure out. Like, we want to identify them now because we can track them as we continue to go out through design and construction. Or this is a constructability issue that we really need to figure out now, like a situation like we're looking at right here. I also put in locations. I was kind of like toying with this. It didn't quite work as I expected, I think, because of how I kind of pulled these models together, but it did give everyone a good idea of where we were talking about. So I create my issue in Navis with that push pin, and then I can see it in the model. And this is the point, you know, where I would take my screenshot in order to have a view of what it's going to look like. I'm also adding in description. So all this information that Scott was kind of touching on in his presentation, just to make sure that everyone knew what we had going on here. So now I'm going to flip. Now I'm in BIM360 document management, the model web viewer. So I go to my issue, and this is what I see. So this is why I've created these different viewpoints and screenshots, because it doesn't save any of the sectioning or any of the like visibility settings, things that are hidden, transparencies, things like that. But it does actually give all the information. So our project management team was able to come in here and see these issues. Within Navis, similar to what Gautham is doing, you know, in his typical coordination project, I was creating viewpoints for each issue and naming them the same number. So this was just a manual process just to keep it coordinated. It was really easy on this because there weren't a lot of issues we were identifying in this process. I might look at some other ways to do that depending on the scope of what I'm doing, but for this project, it actually worked out pretty good. Like I said, I'm then creating a screenshot, and I am using the attachment feature. So here I am back in the web interface. You can see my list of issues back here. I can create attachments, and I can drag and drop different file types into here. That way, when I'm producing my report, I have that image of what the actual issue looks like with everything hidden and all my visibility settings and all that good stuff. When I'm in this model viewer and I'm in my sheets and views, here I can see if I go to my issue viewpoint, it takes us right to the viewpoint. I think maybe Heather mentioned this, that I think overall the navigation in the 360 viewer is pretty easy, but because you can't save a view, sometimes it's hard for someone who's coming into a big model like this to just get started at a specific point. So by having these viewpoints, it just gives someone like a starting point to move forward, especially when I'm talking about a specific issue, they can see it a little bit more clearly. Once we got all that done, then we had to run a report. So there are two different types of reports, which I found out: an issue summary report and an issue detail report. While I was actually working on this, we happened to have an internal VDC meeting. So prior to that meeting, I got in here. Here I am in document management. I go up to my export button and I exported a report, and this is what I got. And I was like, well, that's, I mean, it gives me the like title and the description, but I really want images. And so I think actually Matt Reachers in this meeting today, he was the one who mentioned like there's another way to do a report and it gives you all that other information. I wanted to mention this because it's really kind of hidden. So you actually have to go to the Insight tab, not Document Management. And then down on the bottom left, you see Reports. I never would have found this had someone not actually told me about it. Once I get in there, I then can create a report. Here I'm going to have a list of all my reports. And here's where I can choose between issue detail and issue summary. So I chose my issue detail. I can run that. It's going to, I have all these filtering options. I know Scott was talking about like all this different information that we can put in. I can do that here. I can run the report. I'll get an email when it's done. And then at the end, I get this nice PDF. It still has more information than I'd want in there because I'm not filling out all this information, but for the most part, it was perfect for what I needed. A hyperlink table of contents has my attachment screenshot in there, a link to the model, the description, everything that was needed. So all we did was we just sent this PDF as an attachment to the larger kind of report that our pre-construction team is doing. So just some kind of takeaways from this particular process. It was a really easy integration into an existing workflow. Like the morning I started on this and I was kind of crunched for time, I was like, well, let me give this a shot, and it worked out great. It really expanded the use of our model within our internal project teams, which is kind of a goal of our department within really everything we do. But this is a good way to get the project managers in there. That, like I said, the reporting feature was super easy. The two issues that I had was creating those viewpoints. Obviously was a manual process. It would be cool if there was a way to keep that sectioning and view overrides when you're creating the issue. We've been talking with Autodesk about this. And because I had exported NWCs from Revit models and made an NWD, then the issues weren't linked to any sheets because the sheets don't exist in that NWD file. So that was something else I wanted to think about in the future, was like, how could I possibly do this so that we can still get the issues in the model, but then also on a sheet, which would be even more critical if we're talking about like more issues than just the limited number that we were going through here. But all in all, it was a really good experience. And like I said, I think this is a pretty good example of some low hanging fruit, is just a way to kind of like get started with this process.
Fantastic. Well, love it that it all came together with the ratio project and the team before, and gotta love it when it all seems to work out that way, right? Seems like everybody is super, super interested in that reporting style.
But hey, I'm in Indianapolis where ratio is. Does that count?
Absolutely.
So like it's full circle. I mean, what are the chances?
And they've also, I see some stuff in here about the reports. They've improved reports, especially from like meeting minutes, like that formatting within the past, like, I don't know, month and a half changed, and it is way better. So that makes me hopeful.
I have a question in general. Do you know why you would not give access to the Insight module to everybody on your team? Anyone?
No.
Just always curious why, like the typical setup on the Autodesk people. Oh, Dan says it's because they don't use it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess it's just another one, that I always show it just because like project managers can go there for like a splash screen and kind of see stuff and go from there. Dan said, that's a good point, Dan. So it requires you to better leverage BIM360 than we do. So I'm in, I don't know how many calls a week that it's just being used as like a Dropbox, just for storage of files. And there's a lot of other, byproduct, functionality you have just by putting the models there.
Well, everyone, looks like we are wrapping up a little bit early. Looks like all of the questions were resolved. Please feel free to fill out the survey. As you can see, Allison has shared the link We will give a random participant a gift, just like we did this week. So make sure that you fill that out. We'd love to hear what you'd like to hear about, what presentations you'd like to see, topics that you may be inspired by, if you have a presentation that you'd like to give, etc. Make sure you fill out that survey, give us any information that you'd like to share and how we can improve these meetings in the future. So thank you so much to Scott, to Gautham, Heather, and Laura, of course, for your presentations today. And thank you, of course, to all the participants today, especially those of you who participated in the chat. So you all have a wonderful day, and thank you so much again for participating.
We still got some live chat going on in the side there.
And we have a few minutes. So it says,
Yeah.
Noah, is it just, that's good. They're jumping around on me. Is it just to have your 3D views set up, not break up the actual Revits? So maybe I'm getting that backwards here in terms of the chat, but that's definitely something that I was thinking about in terms of how those views get set up, whether it's an automation that you have, maybe what Heather, if you can speak to that on the design side, or if you have those built into the templates that you have at Ratio, how are you dealing with the creation of some of those views for
Yeah, I think now that we see kind of the power of it, I think we'll probably start to integrate those into our template. We already had a Navisworks general view set up and have like a guide for all of our consultants on how to set up their views. But I can see like it might be nice just to have the ceilings, you know, in a 3D view, so that you can easily check that and don't have to necessarily worry about, you know, all of your type naming being correct, or that people understand it, or just having all of the walls, floors, etc. So I think that's something that we'll build into our template file for sure.
Do you see it being, and Laura, feel free to jump in here. Do you see it being consistent across different projects, or is it maybe a project specific call that you need to make in terms of, you know, maybe you do it in zones, or maybe you do it by level, or, you know, what have you, in terms of how that project is set up and coordinated in terms of clashes? Or is it just, we always do it this way, right? We always do it by level, and, you know, we never break it up in terms of a wing or a quadrant of the building. You know, do you have an approach to the setup of how those different clash reports are analyzed?
For me, it really depends on the project type and the size. You know, like this high school we're working on is enormous compared to like a core and shell office building. Like clearly there's going to be like different ways I want to look at the model in different systems I'm concerned about, depending on what project type that I'm doing. That's where I think working, the more we can get project management and operations and pre-construction into model environments helps, just because of their knowledge of things that are like very specific to load-bearing masonry, which we see a lot in schools. You know, that really helps our process if we know more about the details kind of what to look out for, can help us create those like search sets. And if we're going to break down models a certain way or not, just really knowing what to look for. And I think Heather, you touched on that too.
Yeah. Noah's also asking about, again, the breakdown of the models, and asking about the consultants. So on this particular project, our MEP firm, they were the ones that were kind of pushing us. So they already had some breakdowns in their model, but I'm the one hosting the BIM360 site. So I just told our engineers that I was going to get in there and create some views. I don't know if you have that same relationship with your consultants. Sometimes people don't like you to get into their files at all. But I have like hundreds of how-to guides for our consultants. So I could see myself easily making one that included like, here's how we want your models or 3D views to be published.
I think it would be also cool if there was a way to like, so, you know, Heather gave us access to their design models in Docs, which is great because then I have access to it. But I want to you know, we really need that information then in our system. You know, it'd be if there was some way to connect hubs, basically, is what I'm saying. Because you can't, it's a handoff. It still ends up being a handoff at a certain point, or me downloading and then uploading onto mine. So there's still like the two pieces. So that's interesting to think about how that could possibly work in the future to be able to kind of work a little bit more seamlessly, but still, you know, each person wants to do their own thing. But how do we do that?
Right.
Together?
Yeah. So the issue becomes like how you create issues. And during the design portion of the project, like we have a very, you know, we have a certain need. During the construction phase, it's like much different. So setting up those issues and the typical, you know, typical naming and reasons and all those, it becomes a problem in my mind. I agree with you, Laura. All right, now we are out of time.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining once again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.